Greetings Internet, DDA here, and welcome to my updated Raditz Anger Control List 3.0 for the Perfection set of the Panini Dragon Ball Z card game. Now, Saiyan Raditz got a ton of great support in the Perfection set, and it definitely took it from probably a Tier 2, maybe a Tier 1.5 deck, close to a Tier 1 deck, guys. This deck is really strong. I've actually gone undefeated with the deck since I built it. I haven't played in any major tournaments, but few of the cards that this deck got in Perfection really fill in some holes that this deck had. So let's just scan over the list real quick. So you can see this list is going to be fairly different. It's about maybe 10 or 15 cards different than the 2.0 version. And I know I talked about how I was more focusing on survival victory rather than MPVV, but the great thing about this new version is that it does both very well. So let's go over the changes from 2.0 to 3.0. So you might be asking yourself, well, DDA, how can you go from saying the last version that this deck doesn't really MPVV anymore to say that, oh, well, I can do both just as easily now? Well, that is answered by this card right here. Saiyan Face Strike. Amazing card it got in this set. It raises your anger 2 levels, and if it's stopped, you draw a card. And hit lower your anger 2 levels. Now the beauty of the Rampaging Mastery is that you only need 4 anger to level. So that means that this card gives you 50% of a level. It is very easy to sit at 2 anger and use that card to level. And the great thing about this card is that the hit effect from the Mastery is actually added to the text after the card's hit effect. So if you're sitting at 2 anger, you play this card, you'll level, you'll hit, lower your anger 2, which your anger is now at 0 because you just leveled, and then you'll raise your anger from the Mastery. So this is a 3 anger card, and it is very easy to use effectively in this deck. I put it in this deck to kind of test it out, and I just realized the power that this card has. It's amazing. And there are so many times, considering that this is a kind of a drain deck, like you're going to drain your opponent to 0 with Menace and Emergence that we're going to go over a little later. This card can actually pack a punch and do some damage, so your opponent will think twice about even stopping it. You draw a card if they stop it. Left Kick is a great card, but it just wasn't adding to the overall win condition of the deck as much as this one does. This was a clear swap in my mind. While I lost 1 endurance, which I was a little upset about, Left Kick does more damage, but this card's utility is above and beyond any of the other Saiyan cards that got added into this deck. Really, really good card. This card alone takes this deck from what it was in set 4. Really, really strong card, guys. I highly suggest you try this out. The next change that we made was a straight swap of Saiyan Drive-By for Saiyan Emergence. Now, this actually was very difficult for me to do. Because one of the things that you're losing out on with Saiyan Drive-By is the ability to put a card to the top of your life deck to actually draw later. Now, granted, Saiyan Scouting does fill this role for us already, which is why I inevitably decided that this swap was okay. And the thing that you're gaining with this card, the bad thing about Drive-By is that you weren't really getting damage output from it. Unlike with the Empowered Mastery, that gains anger very easily, and that has a 5 anger cap. This deck has a 4 anger cap, so the maximum mill that you get with Drive-By is like 2 or 3 cards. But even further than that, when you have a high amount of anger with Rampaging, you want to capitalize on that. You want to level. You don't want to sit and allow your opponent to lower your anger. You worked hard for that anger. You hit some attacks. You bypassed your opponent's defenses. You don't want to risk your opponent lowering your anger. So a card that Saiyan got in the Perfection set is this amazing card, Saiyan Emergence. Power, Rejuvenate 1. Your opponent's MP loses 4 stages. If the power level of your opponent MP is 0, rejuvenate this card. So, This card gives you 2 cards and has a maximum damage output of 2 to 3. This card gives you 2 cards and has a maximum damage output of 4. So quite literally, the only thing that you're losing with this card by making this swap is the ability to put a card on the top of your life deck. You're maximizing your damage potential as well as allowing yourself the ability to just drain your opponent a flat 4 stages. This is great. It can combo with Menace just as well as this can. You know, a little bit worse because Drive-By can rejuvenate a card anywhere in your discard pile, whereas this card, it has to be the top card of your discard pile in order to get Menace in play. It's not that big of a deal because it's pretty easy to set up, and it's not like your opponent is going to be able to really stop the event besides a sphere. So this swap has just added such mileage to this deck. You know, it just supplements Menace so well. You know, you Menace, you Emergence, Menace back into play, Menace again. Just do lots of stage draining, and this card alone can just take the survivability of this deck, the survival victory of this deck, and really make it a threat on the board. Probably one of my favorite cards that has been released in perfection. Next up, straight swap was made for Devastating Blow and a new card, Saiyan Rapid Fire. Love this card. So good. Energy attack costing 1 stage. Damage from this attack cannot be prevented or modified, which means that it is always going to do 5 life cards of damage. Nothing is going to stop it. No prevention, no modification. Damage 5 life cards. Hey, that means it's always hitting critical damage. Hit, raise your anger 1. So this is a 2 anger card, which is one of the reasons why I swapped it over Devastating Blow. Another reason is I wanted an additional way to activate my level 4 power. I wanted an additional way, as well as I wanted a little bit more Dragon Ball tech. So this is a way to kind of incorporate that in, just to add my ability to steal Dragon Balls. The only downside of this card is that Tree will not modify it. So if they're at 0, it's not going to be doing 7. It will only do 5, always. Devastating Blow, man. I thought you needed that card. It banishes 3 cards, has good anger tech. Well, you know, with the introduction of Cell into the metagame, you know who we're not seeing a lot of? Piccolo. And Devastating Blow was mainly in here for the Piccolo matchup, because Piccolo's Weighted Clothing is a card, and you don't really want that sitting in your opponent's discard pile. Cards like Piccolo's Weighted Clothing would be the only cards that I wanted to banish from my opponent's discard pile. I don't really care about Time as a Warrior's Tool. I have defenses. I'm a high defensive deck and high setup deck, and a lot of the actions that I perform aren't attacks. I do have attacks, but mainly if I get timed, I'm fine with that. I can just sit back, defend, and then wait till next combat. I have no problem doing that. So I don't really need the discard pile banishing. So this card is much higher value overall. It does more damage, gives me critical damage to activate my 4 and get me Dragon Balls, as well as gives me more anger. Great card. Next up here, getting close to the last little bit of changes, we dropped Saiyan Strength Test for a single copy of Enhanced Reflexes. Now again, the reason we did this is because we don't really care about discard pile banishing. And the Saiyan Strength Test is actually a really slow card. If the game is not lasting very long, it doesn't really do much. You really need the game to last many combats for you to really see the impact of Saiyan Strength Test. So it was really just in there for the Piccolo Namekian matchup. You know, they were gaining a lot of levels, they were gaining a lot of stages, so it was difficult for me to drain them to do damage. And so I really need to rely on that discard pile banishing. But, you know, Piccolo Namekian, they're not relevant in the format right now. I'm sorry, guys. Like, Cell really does a big number on Piccolo. And I'm not really afraid of seeing Piccolo anymore. And I've been trying to integrate Enhanced Reflexes in this build for a while. So I managed to fit one in. It's good against Krillin. It reduces Destructiveness damage down to 0. as well as just adds to the number of Omni blocks that are in this deck. So we have 3 offensive guards, 3 Saiyan Outrages, and enhanced reflexes now. So we have actually 7 Omni blocks. That's great. Likewise, we dropped a single Staredown for Villainous Energy Sphere. I would really like to include 2 Villainous Energy Spheres in this deck, but I only own 1, so this is the 1 copy that's going to be in the deck. I will never get rid of Staredown out of this deck. It's at 2 copies right now. I had it at 3, I dropped it down to 2 to add in the sphere, but I will never take it lower than 2. And the reason for that is its synergy with the level 3. Let me tell you how devastating it is to enter on the opponent, kill their only card that they're holding, and then open with a Staredown. It is so devastating. However, it was kind of clunky the times that I would draw into 2 Staredowns, and I found it just wasn't adding much the second Staredown. So I dropped it down to 2 copies in this deck to prevent that from happening. Chances are I won't be drawing 2 in my hand, but just a really strong card and really, really powerful with the level 3. The final and probably most significant change that this deck got is the dropping of 1 copy of Saiyan Flight. So I still have 2 copies in the deck for a single copy of Saiyan Transformation Drill. Now this is the only style drill in the deck. It's not discarded when you advance, so you can keep it out. Now, however, you do want to keep in mind that Tree of Might will be banished if you play this card if you put this card in play. So keep that in mind. You know, there are certain matchups that you're going to want to play this drill. But there are also other matchups that you're not going to want to. The main thing that this card gives you is, well, it gives you a possibility for Menace Loop. It power rejuvenate 1. But the main thing is that used when entering combat, you may banish this drill to return all drills in play to their owner's hands. Now, as you can see, I didn't add overwhelming power into this deck because, well, I'm so weak. Chances are I'm not going to be stronger than the opponent, as well as I still haven't added Saiyan Discovery. Why is that? I have 3 Intimidations in the deck, and 3 Intimidations is enough for decks that play a few drills, like Blue Dominance decks, or decks that play a few setups, you know, remove the opponent's Visage, you know, Yamcha decks. But the real problem that this deck had was orange decks. You know, Intimidation, really, it was difficult for it to break through the orange Focusing Drill wall. But this Saiyan Transformation Drill completely solves that issue for us. How great would it be? Now, I haven't done this yet, but just imagine in your head, how great would it be if late game, you know, the orange deck that you're playing against has like 9 or 10 drills in play. You drop this drill down. They're not expecting it. You drop this drill down and just enter and bounce all their drills in their hand. Now they have all 9 drills in their hand. They have to discard all of them at the end of combat. They can do nothing to stop this. It's great. Complete and utter counter to orange decks. And this is the only drill we play. So its effect is not going to do anything bad for us. So that's the changes from 2.0 to 3.0. So now let's go over some of the general strategy and matchups. Alright, so now it's time to talk about a general strategy for this Saiyan Raditz Anger Control deck. So if you play this deck a bunch of times, you'll notice that this is probably one of the most aggressive control decks that you could ever play. And namely, that's because of the level 1. The level 1 is actually going to give you card advantage and anger. So when you're on the level 1, you're only actually going to need 3 anger to level up. So the deck plays about 20 planning cards. You know, it plays a bunch of setups and 1 drill now. So you don't have to go aggressive in the beginning. But if you draw the right cards into your hand, you're going to want to do that. Especially to jump up in levels as fast as possible. You're going to want to try to get the jump on the opponent with this level 1, and it's pretty easy for you to do that. If you see certain cards in your hand, you're going to want to go aggressive, and those cards are namely the Face Strike, If you see this Face Strike card, you know you literally only need 1 anger. Because you got 1 anger from your power, and then as long as you hit 2 anger, you're going to be able to level with Face Strike. So if you draw a Face Strike early, hey, go aggressive. Especially if you draw Body Blow. Body Blow will really help you out. You can get Tree or you can get Rescue in order to set up later game for some Menace loops. But Body Blow or a Face Strike, Staredown, just a really, like, you're going to want a good mixture of attacks and blocks in your hand, and then you know you want to go aggressive. It's going to be very easy for you to jump up to the level 2. And once you get here, much like how I talked about in my previous videos, you're going to want to decide whether or not you're going to go for MPPV or you want to sit here. And this is going to be matchup dependent. Depending on the matchups will determine how long you want to sit on this level, because this level is actually really good for piecewise damage for you. Every time you play a setup, every time a setup or drill that you control enters play, your opponent is going to destroy the top card of his life deck. So what's that good against? That's good against blue protective decks. You know you're going to need at least 5 anger to level, so you may lag on this level a little bit longer than you would want. So take advantage of that. Don't see that as a disadvantage. Take advantage of that and then just sit here for a little bit, mill them for a good, 5 to 10 cards, and then jump up. Because we all know that the level 3 really shines late game. Now, the level 2 actually has some really significant combos in this deck. Body Blow is one of them. If you actually Body Blow your Tree of Might in play, this becomes a 2 anger card. Because Tree of Might will enter play, a setup or drill is enter play during combat, so the opponent will mill, then you'll gain an anger. It's great. Likewise, the Saiyan Freedom, the single copy of Saiyan Freedom that we play in the deck, is really good for this. It allows you to search out the single dirty tactics that we have, as well as Saiyan Flight. So setup or drill, entering play during combat, more anger, more milling. Likewise, everyone always talks about the Menace loop with Raditz, so we have to talk about it. And it really starts shining on level 2 and explodes on level 4. So on level 2, we have cards like Rescue, Emergence, as well as Flight to really combo with Menace and bring it into play during combat, giving you anger and additional milling. And you can see here that this deck, you don't need to attack. You don't need to attack with this deck. And that's one of the things that I really love about it. Because, if you're facing a blue deck or you're facing a Namekian deck, I hate when Namekian blocks my attacks with hybrid defense. Especially, everyone's talking about Namekian Restored Cell right now. And the main niche of Namekian Restored Cell is, I'm gonna turbo to 4, I'm gonna use hybrid defense, and I'm gonna use flinch, and I'm going to play Dragon Balls and rejuvenate all day. So a good answer for that, hey, just don't attack. Wait for them to de-level off of their 4, immediately follow up with a Menace, Emergence, and Menace, and lock them at 0, and then go to town. This deck actually works fairly well against Cell because it doesn't need to level. This deck does have 2 win conditions, Survival and MPPV, and after adding in the Face Strike, I really feel like this card is going to make the MPPV of this deck perfectly easy to do. Like, some people said MPPV is dead. I don't think so when you consider this card insane. But like I said, it doesn't need to level. Like, you're fine playing the game on either 1 or 2. 1 gives you card advantage and 2 gives you damage. And they're both great levels, and you don't mind playing on them. Now, another thing that I talked about in my previous video was you didn't really care about Wall Breaker being on you. Not really true, kinda. You don't really care because you can play the game on your early levels. However, we do have multiple answers for Wall Breaker now. We have the Rapid Fire, so we can play the Rapid Fire, and that's a good answer to Wall Breaker as well. But now that this deck can actually MPPV, we may want to consider that if Wall Breaker is going to be coming on to us. So a lot of combos on the 2. And don't be afraid if you get locked here. I really I want to stress this, guys. It forces him in combat It forces him to play aggressive against you, which you want him to do. You want him to do that. I had someone say to me, oh, well, Raditz level 2 forces him in combat. Why would you want that? You want to stay outside of combat. Well, yeah, but think about the advantage you gain for your opponent entering on you. You could be down in life cards, and the opponent will still have to enter on you because inevitably you will catch up to him with this outside passive milling. You want the opponent to enter on you and not be forced to enter on the opponent, because then you can play defensively, you can do some damage, and then you'll get a turn, you'll get your next turn to either recover or capitalize on locking your opponent at 0 and really push out damage next combat. It's pretty easy for you to hit the 3. You'll probably hit this every game, and this level is extremely powerful late game. And like I said before, my favorite and probably my most hated for my opponent combo with this deck is using the level 3 and following up with a Staredown. It's ridiculous. I mean, you take out the 2 best cards of your opponent's hand. It basically makes their hand useless. Almost like this level 3 turns Staredown into almost a Time as a Warrior's tool. Kind of crazy. So once you hit the 4, which you will hit the 4 way, way more with this version of the deck. Face Strike is just money all day, every day. So once you do hit this 4, you have 2 different cards that activate the 4 ability. You have Pinpoint Blast and Rapid Fire. And once you hit this level, there's 2 things that you're going to want to do. You're either going to want to Menace loot, or you're going to want to go for MPPV. If by some chance your opponent has banished your Menaces, or the amount of life deck, maybe it's early game, maybe somehow, some way you jumped up in levels so quickly that your opponent still has 30 cards left in his life deck. Why go for Menace loot? Just go for MPPV. The beauty of this level, though, is that it is very easy for you to play all Menace into play. Anytime that you play a setup or drill, just play one. Just if it's your turn, you put one into play. You choose anytime one enters play, you choose a card in your discard pile and rejuvenate it. So anytime that you play a setup or drill, you play all Menace from your discard pile. And this is why we play 3 copies, because there are just so many different ways you can get all of them in play. Anytime that you play a setup or drill, anytime that you rejuvenate Menace, you will play all of them. Anytime that you activate your power, which is, the first time you use a critical damage effect, search your life deck or discard pile for a setup or drill and place it into play. Now, never get Menace with your power. There's no reason to get Menace, because if you get something else, like if you get Saiyan Enraged, for example, if you get a Saiyan Enraged, then a setup or drill enters play, you can just play all Menace anyway from your discard pile. So there is no reason for you to choose Menace with your power when you'll just inevitably get them all in play anyway. So like I said, these are the 2 main setups that you're going to be focusing on when you hit level 4. So like I said, you either Menace loot or you go for MPPV. And if you're going for MPPV, just get Saiyan Enraged in play, and then you really only need 3 anger to win. So this deck, extremely strong, extremely fun to play. I highly recommend it. It is not, it's not an easy deck to play, I would say. I wouldn't call it simple. You definitely need to have, knowledge of not only your deck, the matchup, your opponent's deck. There are a lot of different things that this deck can do, and one simple example would be the Scouting. This card can be used, of course, for its amazing ability to put 2 cards to the top of your life deck, and likewise it can be used as a 5-stage physical, 7-stage physical if you have Tree of Might in play. So that's just one example of a card that can be used 2 different ways, increasing the skill cap of this deck. You're going to want to know when do you want to shoot this as a physical? When do you want to use it for its ability? So I wouldn't recommend this deck for new players, but if you like control decks, especially if you like the Saiyan cards like Emergence and Scouting, this is the deck for you. So I hope you guys enjoyed my 3.0 Saiyan Raditz decklist build video. Rate, comment, and subscribe below. I'm going to be coming out with a lot more decklist videos. I'm taking time and updating each one of my decks for set 5. The next deck that I'm probably going to update is my Nail Namekian. So look forward to seeing that video coming soon. As well as I've come to realize some major flaws in my deck design in my Black Devious Trunks sword build. So I'm gonna be coming out with a Perceptive Trunks sword build, as well as revamping my Devious Trunks sword build, which actually the builds are gonna be very different, and I think a lot of people are gonna like what I'm doing with the different builds. As well as I'm actually working on a Cell Empower deck for my brother. And you know, Roshi is starting to grow on me, guys. I really like Roshi, so I may mess around with some Roshi Red or maybe some Roshi Black. So look forward to all that, guys, and please, keep posting on my videos. I do these videos for you guys, so the more I see how much you love them, the more that it makes me want to make videos. So thank you, guys.